Hello, my name is Rob Saltzman. I'm Associate Dean and a professor at the USC Gould School of Law. And it's my great pleasure today to be interviewing a mentor of mine, a good friend, and my former boss, Scott Bice, who has been on the faculty at USC for many years, is also a graduate of both the college and the law school. And we're having a discussion today, part of the Living History project for the USC Emeriti Center. And so we're just going to talk about things that Scott has witnessed, taken part in, and thinking about in his long career here at USC. So first, Scott, welcome. It's a real pleasure for me to be here with you.
Thanks, Rob, and I look forward to our conversation.
Great, me too. I think, if you don't mind, a good place to start really is in order historically. That is, if you talk a little bit about what brought you to USC initially and what that was like.
My parents both went to USC, so I started coming to USC when I was old enough to understand what a football game was about. I graduated from high school in 1961, walked on the campus as a freshman then, so that was 54 years ago, and graduated from what is now the Marshall School in 65, went to the law school, graduated in 68, and came back after a year working on the East Coast to join the faculty of the law school. So I've been here on this campus 54 years and on the faculty for 46 of those years.
And just a brief little bit of a detour. You mentioned working on the East Coast for a year. I think you should at least explain a little bit about what that was, since it's significant professionally.
Yeah, at the time, Earl Warren was Chief Justice of the United States, and he had 3 law clerks, and he divided the country into East, Midwest, and West. And each law school in each one of those regions nominated one of their graduates to interview for his clerkship. And I was fortunate enough to be chosen as the Western representative. And so I spent a year working as his law clerk at the Supreme Court of the United States.
And are there things you'd like to talk a little bit about your experience as an undergraduate here, what the campus was like, as you reflect back on that at this point, and how it may have changed as for undergraduates?
Yeah, I had a good experience as an undergraduate here. I was in a fraternity and experienced all the pluses and minuses of fraternity life. I majored in business and had good instruction, a good experience. There were a few professors who really had a major impact on me, and I think was one of the reasons I went on to law school. 2 that really impacted my experience as a senior here were a fellow by the name of Herman Harvey, who was a professor of psychology, and Wes Robb, who was a professor of religion. And they had a joint seminar that had about 10 students in it. And Harvey was an empiricist and looked at the world, you could only know what you could prove empirically. And Wes Robb was a humanist who thought that there were many other ways of understanding the world and reality and value and so forth. And they would debate about certain topics, and the students were involved in the debate. And it really was an intellectually enormously stimulating experience. And I would say out of my undergraduate academic experience, that was probably the high point of my 4 years here.
Thank you. And then you went right into law school after you graduated?
Yes, I went right after graduation, went into law school.
And what was your experience like as a law student?
Well, law school was an absolute revelation to me. The school at the time was going through a transition. There was some of the more senior professors who were moving towards retirement, and a whole cadre of younger professors who had basically just about graduated from law school. They had very different ideas about what legal education should be, so I had a wonderful opportunity to see what's kind of called the black letter instruction from the senior professors and much more interdisciplinary kind of instruction from the younger professors. So it was really a wonderful opportunity to see the strengths of both and the challenges of both. It was an exciting time.
As a student, you were aware of that changing nature of the school?
Yes, very much so. I had a torts professor who was of the old school and who believed that the law was a closed system of rules that you needed to learn and understand. And if you wanted to know about sociology or other impacts, other influences on how law gets formed, you should go to the sociology department or to the psychology department. And it was very clear that he thought what the other faculty were doing was not appropriate to a law school, and was very plain about that. And of course, the folks who were on the other side, some of whom still remain as my colleagues, had a different view. And in the end, the Young Turks won out, and I think actually made USC kind of one of the leading institutions moving towards what has now become pretty much what every law school does is in teaching law.
And so when you graduated from law school, you clerked then at the Supreme Court. Did you have a sense when you graduated that you'd be coming back? Did you have other plans or goals? How did that come about?
Well, when I was a student, I did well, and the faculty had sort of identified me, without my knowing it, as somebody who might fit into a faculty role. And one of my colleagues, and still my colleague, was teaching a course and said to me, I've got to go out of town to a conference. Would you teach my course for me for 2 sessions?
As a student?
Right? As a student. So I was a third-year student, and he asked me to teach the course. And this, I didn't know, but this was a test, right, to see how well I would do. So I prepared and taught the course, 2 sessions of it, and apparently got good reviews because after I graduated, January after I graduated, I got an offer from the school to come back at the end of my clerkship and join the faculty.
That's great. Did you get any pushback from your fellow students when you were teaching as a student?
No, they were actually now they were first-year students, and I was a third-year student. Okay. So, and I was editor of the Law Review, so I had some creds. And no, they told me they liked it better than the regular professors. So,
well, there you go.
Who knows?
Like students today, tell you what they think you want to hear.
Yes.
So you come back having graduated very recently, and you join the faculty, so you have colleagues, people who were your teachers, maybe mentors. Can you talk about that, what the law school was like, what the campus was like, professionally, what was going on?
First, the law school. Law school was about 150 students per class, so total student body about 450. The faculty I was the 18th member of the faculty, so it was a relatively small faculty. We were in what is now the School of Accounting building, so we were in a building that had actually been built in 1925 for the law school. Before that, it was downtown. As a young person on the faculty, my former teachers were supportive, treated me as a colleague. I had no feeling of being a junior person. You got to do it the way we said. A lot of discretion for me to do it. My first day that I was teaching, I got into the class, and in the old building, the professor stood up on a dais and looked down at the students. And I walked into the first day of class I was teaching. I got up on the dais and I looked down, and there was a former high school classmate of mine sitting in the front row, because I had gone straight through, and he'd gone out and done something for a few years and coming back to law school. He looked up and he says, "Scott, what are you doing up there? Where's the professor? And I said, you know, Dave, I am the professor. And he got a kind of bemused look on his face, like, I'm paying for you to teach. But we got through the semester. And,
That's great. And were you, in those early years on the faculty in the law school, were you involved with things around campus, or was it pretty focused at the law school? Were you?
Yeah, so the first year, you know, as a first-year law teacher, you're working 8 to 10 hours for every hour that you're in class. There's an enormous learning curve that as a teacher you have to endure. All you know about law is that you've been to law school for 3 years, right? And then a year as a clerk. So when you're teaching, you got to know a lot more than what you just kind of carry around in your head. So there's a lot of preparation. So the first year was up at 5 in the morning and home at 10 o'clock at night, and you know, pretty much all consuming. At the end of my first year, Dorothy Nelson, who was then the dean of the school, came to me and said, you know, I think you've got some administrative talent. I'd like you to become the academic associate dean. This was a new position. We hadn't had academic associate dean.
You'd been there 1 year on the faculty.
I'd been 1 year on the faculty. I was still an untenured assistant professor. And I said, well, what's that entail? And she said, well, you're going to basically be in charge of the faculty. And I said, well, Dorothy, I'm doing. She says, all right, they respect you. It'll be all right. So I did that for 4 years, and you know, planned the curriculum, scheduled the people to teach, hired adjunct faculty, and got a taste of administration. And during that time, we were going through a change of presidency at USC. Norman Topping was retiring, and Jack Hubbard had been brought in as provost and then was moving towards the presidency. And he had Zorab Kaperlian as his, I forget exactly what the title was, but essentially Zorab was acting as what we would now call the provost. And for some reason, I caught Zorab's eye. And he had a group called the Advisory Committee on Academic Planning, which was hand-picked people from around the campus that he particularly, for one reason or another, thought had something to contribute to strategic planning for the university. So at that second year, not only was I associate dean, but I was a member of what was called ACAP, and each member of ACAP headed a task force on some aspect of strategic planning. So in those early years, I was involved in the administration of law school and involved with university strategic planning.
And you mentioned in passing Dorothy Nelson was dean. Unless I'm mistaken, it was quite unusual at that point for a law school to have a woman as a dean. There were probably plenty of law schools that didn't have any women on the faculty at all. Was that indicative of something, or?
I think it was probably just mainly a testament to Dorothy's talent. She had been associate dean under Orrin Evans, and when Orrin retired, there was a national search. Dorothy was the interim dean. I think initially there was not much expectation that she would become the permanent dean. It's not unusual for an associate dean to fill in. They did a national search, and Dorothy was selected. And so she was at that time she was the first, I think, woman dean of a major law school at that time. And there were not many women in the law school at that time. So it was unique.
And you had mentioned before about the shifting in the curriculum and the shifting of the nature of the faculty. So now you're on the faculty, you've been there 4 or 5 years, you're assistant or associate dean. What's happened at that point with what's going on with the curriculum and the faculty?
Well, the so-called old guard by that time was retiring, and by the time I finished up as associate dean had essentially all retired. And they'd been replaced by younger, interdisciplinary inclined faculty. So in that transition period, by the time I was finished as associate dean, the transition had pretty much been completed. And there were no longer really philosophic differences about how you go about doing the curriculum.
And was it at that point you became dean, or were you then on the faculty without administrative responsibility for a while?
Yeah, no, I was on the, so I finished up as associate dean in I finished up as, I started in 69, 70, so about 1974, I finished up as associate dean. And then for 6 years, I was a member of the faculty with no administrative responsibility. And then I became dean in 1980.
And can you talk some about that, as becoming the dean, as a new dean, your recollections of that, how you might reflect about that?
Yeah, there was again, a national search. Dorothy had been nominated to go on the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, so there was clear that she was going to be leaving, and so there was a national search for a dean. We had some very good candidates. I was an internal candidate. We had external candidate that was the university's first choice, and couldn't land him, and so I was a second choice and became dean. And I think with good support from the faculty, a lot of support from the alumni, interestingly, because they saw that I had gone to SC, undergraduate and the law school, been on the faculty at USC. I was kind of like local boy makes good, right? And so I got good support from the alumni as I started.
And then you served as dean for a long time, 20 years, which in law school, well, it may be true outside of law schools, but certainly in law schools was an unusually long tenure, quite successful. What were the things that were happening as you were dean that you pushed for, the accomplishments you were most proud of, the kinds of changes or progress that happened when you were dean?
I became dean understanding that a major responsibility was to raise money. I'd never raised money. I didn't know whether I could do it or not, but I understood it to be the job and that you had to go out and do it. I was truly blessed to have a mentor. His name was Carl Franklin, and Carl had been a member of the law faculty, had been a vice president for legal affairs for the university, and at that time, and I think he'd also been finance, but at that time Carl was just vice president for legal affairs, had a great interest in the progress of the law school, and took me under his wing and showed me how to raise money. And it was a spectacular learning experience. Apropos of be sort of set up as a test to teach by having somebody ask me to teach their class. Carl, on a couple of occasions early in my tenure, had some donor in his pocket who was ready to do whatever Carl told him to send the money to. I didn't know that. Carl said, let's go out, see if you can raise some money from this person, right? And see if you can make the case. He's kind of a hard sell, but give it a whack, right? So a couple of lunches, and the fellow said, I like what I'm hearing from you, I'll give you, and in those days, $20,000 was a lot of money. I'm gonna give you $20,000. I thought, my God, I can do this. This is great. This is fun, right? Because raising money is like sales. And if you make a sale, it's fun. If you don't make a sale, it's not so much fun. And so those early kind of setup successes gave me confidence. And then I was also blessed to have a wife who enjoyed the social aspects of being dean and being dean's wife in her case. And so she enjoyed the social aspects of fundraising. So we became a pretty successful team over the 20 years that we did it. Endowment was around $6 million when we started, and it was $130 million when we ended. Had 4 chairs when we started, had 28 chairs when we ended. It was a successful time. It was also a time in which the law school was a priority for the university. The university under Zorab and then later under Jim Zumberg and Neil Pings had identified the law school as some place that with a modest investment compared to what you have to invest into the sciences, the medicine and that sort of thing, that you can build a national class school. USC had always been important in this region, but it was not that big on the national scene, and the goal was to get us recognized on the national scene. So we were blessed not only that we were able to raise money, but we were also positively supported by the university in terms of our what became subvention, our budget allocations and so forth. So the faculty grew substantially. We added, for a number of years, we had 1 faculty member a year. Started and increased the size of the clinical faculty. And just across the board, we're growing, built an addition onto the law building, more space, more faculty, more resources. It was a good time to be dean.
Right. Well, good time to be successful, which you clearly were. You've talked a few times about mentors who helped you in your professional development. Do you feel like you've been a mentor to some of the young faculty that you hired over the years, or others? You want to talk about that a little bit?
You know, I don't think if you're a mentor, you know that. You know, I mean, my attitude in terms of administration, as you know, is that you hire good people, you trust them, you delegate, and you basically say, if you can't handle the problem, come see me. And that's always, usually is a pretty good indication they're not going to come see you because they can pretty much handle the problem. But if they can't, they will come see you. So, and I think USC has been really smart all the time that I've been involved, by allowing units to spend money on what I would call mid-management. Especially when I was dean, USC was very decentralized compared to our sister institution across town. So being the dean of the law school was very much like being the president of a small college. You know, the library, admissions, student services, fundraising, all was my responsibility, but it was also my authority. And so you could move things, get things done. There was not a lot of central bureaucracy you had to go through to get approvals and that sort of thing. So it was a time in which, you know, you could, with some good luck and success, and the fundraising was on top of whatever the university was providing. So it was almost like a matching grant. So it was excellent, actually, opportunity to do that.
And you've talked some about how the law school changed over time. You reflect now sort of about changes in the main university, the college, or the university as a whole, from your perspective?
You know, both in terms of physical plant and in terms of the quality of the academic program, the quality of the faculty. USC in the years that I've been here has been on just a steady trajectory upward. You look at the campus today, I mean, it is twice as big, and the buildings are you know, excellent. We used to still had a lot of Quonset huts that came out of World War II when I was here, and even in the first years of my deanship. So it's been steady progress. We've been blessed with some really, truly effective central leadership, and it's been a lot of fun to be a part of this institution for 50 years and watch it grow. I used to say that when I first started, even when I was first starting as dean, if you ask people on the East Coast, what are the major institutions west of the Mississippi, right, or out there? Well, there's Berkeley and there's Stanford and maybe, I don't know, there's one in Los Angeles, I think it's UCLA, but and now the answer is clearly, oh yes, well there's Stanford and there's USC and there's UCLA and there's Berkeley and they're all national class institutions. So it's been fun to be part of that growth.
And as you look back on your career, a successful professor, a very successful professor and dean, is there advice or comments you offer to the current and future leadership here at USC to help continue in the tradition that you've seen?
Well, I'm a big believer in delegation, and a big believer that you pick, deans, and you give them lots of authority, and you hold them responsible for the results. I think not only in this university, but in higher education generally, there's been a movement towards centralization. There's been a movement towards more administrative positions and offices and that sort of thing. Not a big fan of that. There are reasons for it in terms of regulation and federal standards and so forth and so on, but I think it's a trend that I would like to see somewhat reversed. Right. Not optimistic that it will be, but something I think you get a better result where you give people a lot of responsibility and authority. And
are there anecdotes, events, things you remember, or other things that you'd like me to ask about, that you'd like to talk about that I haven't hit on?
Well, one of the my memories of early in my career, again, it goes back to Zora Kaperlian, who was dedicated his life to this university and to making it good. He took me aside one time. He was asking me to do something administratively, and he said, Scott, there are two kinds of people that you need to have a great university. You need the scholars, and then you need the academics. And I said, well, Zora, what's the difference? Well, Zora said, I am an academic. That is, I am fully qualified to be a scholar, but I choose to spend my time making the resources available so that scholars can do their work. And I think you're an academic, he said to me. And I thought about that, and I thought, yeah, that's maybe where my talent lies. I mean, I can teach fine in terms of the kind of work that it takes to be a top scholar. I don't think that was my forte. My forte was more in providing the resources, the leadership, the atmosphere of an institution that in which scholars can flourish. And so, yeah, that's why I spent 20 years as dean.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you, Scott. I thank you both for your role in my professional life and my personal life as well. You've been a wonderful mentor for me, and I'm so pleased to have spent my professional career here, and thank you for that, since you hired me actually twice, once and then when I left, and then I had the sense to come back. So I want to thank you for that, and thank you for your time today and your service to the university and the community at large. It's really been a pleasure to work with you.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it.